The sun rises over the tree line and peers into the crowded hut. Zen's single-size living quarters is just barely big enough to hold the group comfortably, but does the job. Drool hanging from Sid's mouth hits the floor into a formed puddle. A large gust of wind hits the building, roughly shaking the cabin door, and a chilling blast of cold enters through the kitchen window, jolting most of the group awake. As Zen hurries to the window, he slips on the puddle of drool, but luckily catches himself against the bookshelf filled with scrolls. Still half awake, Jace notices Zen's attention to the wind and takes action, jumping out of the open window and trying to get a better view on what is causing such a uncommon chill. Root is quick to follow behind him and begins sniffing the area which held a cold frost among the ground. "Hey, wake up! Something is going on," BC says, still a bit groggy, but energetic in the attempts to try to wake Sid up from his slumber. "Leave him," Zen says. "We need to get outside and see what's going on." "I guess you're right," BC replies, a bit worried something may happen in leaving Sid to sleep in such a bizarre situation. As BC joins Zen at the doorstep, they are shocked to see what is in front of them. Jace and Root stand their ground at who they assume is to be one of Broski's followers. The behemoth of a man stands holding Boneyard's remain around his neck like a necklace holds a pendant. Even though Jace was unable to identify any of the beings within the metal orb, he can smell the same odd stench coming from the monstrous being in front of them. "You're one of Broski's, aren't you?" Jace shouts at the cold-eyed man, his shadow reaching across the frost-covered ground like a colossal shade of doom. The man doesn't say anything and only stands with the sack swinging from his postured chest. BC, frozen beside Zen, who has a look of absolute horror spread across his face, begins to tremble, stricken with fear at the nightmare standing in front of Jace. With her hand grasped tightly to Zen's shoulder, BC does her best to shake off the chills, and the two of them nervously and slowly find themselves behind Root and Jason Root. "We are in trouble. This guy looks like a real problem," Zen whispers over to Jace. "What's the plan? We gotta be careful. This thing looks like it could smash us into nothing," BC squeaks, trying to control her shivering body. The creature's skin swirls within itself as Jace tries to speak to the abomination again, but is cut short as it begins to bark out as at Jace, not interested in a reply. "You have fallen from your domain, Broski. I am here to see that you do not cause any more trouble. Prepare to die." With that, the monster's chest opens like a sideways mouth with rotten teeth, swallowing the remains of Boneyard and Cloak whole. Its arms explode at the same time, reaching for Root and Jace, who are too quick to be caught by the sludge-like skin. BC and Zen, both still unable to freely move their bodies from either old age or fear, see the monster's outstretched arms reach the ground as a collective puddle of blood and pus before reaching for them from the newly formed puddle. As Root charges up to attack the enemy from behind, it is only able to delay it long enough for Jace to grab hold of both Zen and BC. out of the pathway of the monster. Running behind the house, Jace drops them off in the forest, and Zen takes off immediately for the back door to recover Sid. I'm sorry, BC, you are not ready for this battle, Jace says, not waiting for BC's reply and leaping back into the open to help Root, who was already having trouble evading the multiple attacks that were spreading across the campsite. As BC watched Jace jump over the cabin to face the beast, she couldn't help but feel something compelling her to venture deeper into the forest. With a sense of curiosity drawing her in, the sound of the ambush fades to a dull buzz as she submerges into the woods. Jace fires off a concentrated blast of air with a cupped hand to test the density of the mysterious monster as he falls directly over it. Give me a break, broski. Do you not know me at all? It shouted, its voice equally as strong as the sonic blast that Jace shot. Its skin gushes among its structure, almost writhing within itself before spilling into several streams that shoot up like a surge to attack Jace from all directions. Root launches an attack in order to counter the multiple threats, but is only able to prevent a few of the slime appendages by burning them into nothing but ash. Before Jace can even hit the ground, he is wrapped in the rotten skin-like substance as the slime arms pull him closer to the grotesque monster. The last thing he can see and hear, other than the monster's wicked laugh, is the wind and Root sparks and explosions of energy hitting the creature from the opposite side. Unable to breathe and feeling as if he is swimming in a pool of heat and darkness, Jace starts to feel that it would all be over soon, and a sense of calmness takes over, telling him to just let it all go. As his body stops struggling and thoughts start to fade away, he feels a force pass through him like a wave on the ocean. The voice seemed familiar, but Jace was unable to see through the pitch blackness of the void he found himself in. You have the power to fight this, Jace. You only have to look inside yourself to find the strength you need to do so. The hand fades from his shoulder like the thoughts that repeatedly escape from his mind, and Jace, still unable to breathe, lets out a scream that would shake High Peak Mountain itself. The dark sludge fills his lungs, now unable to let out any more air. Without his last breath, Jace can only feel the presence of Broski laughing inside him as it escapes from his body to leave him to die. Still buried within the darkness that had consumed him, Jace relinquishes his fight against his own death and the fear of Broski's control. It all seems to fade to nothing as he begins to feel his body give up, but suddenly his chest starts to tingle and soon is burning hot. It sinks into his stomach and slowly spreads to the palm of his hands. He can feel the thick black sludge around him starting to boil with every pulse that feeds the heat coming from his body. Soon, his vision seeps through the dark ooze, and he can see Root panting, barely able to hold up its own weight. Root is still attempting to attack, trying to free Jace from the monster's hold. A large lightning bolt releases from Root after a quick flank to the monster's right. Seeing Jace peering out from the depths of the rotting flesh makes Root give a last attempt and hits the monster with everything it has left before getting sideswiped by another one of the followers' fluid attacks. With nothing but pure rage entering his being, Jace pushes it into the very fire that was already burning inside of him. The sludge-like skin sputters before turning to vapor around him, and his lungs that were once filled with the same thick goo flows out of his mouth like angry smoke. The follower's voice screams like a massive amount of pain. Before it detaches itself from him, slowly returning to its human-like form. Jace doesn't give it a chance to counter before laying a dense, heated blow upon the monster once more, removing its limbs in a trail of vapor. What is this? Have you returned to power, broski? Let us rule this pitiful world like we have always said we would. The voice now almost as forgiving as the wind that blows against the forest. Jace says nothing, his eyes furiously focused and his stance not even resembling the same as at the beginning of the fight. Two more heated blasts radiate outward from Jace's chest, causing most of what's left of the skin bag-like monster to vaporize until there's barely enough to cover the cloak that held Boneyard's remains inside. Jace scrapes up the sludge-like material, hardly able to let out a scream of hateful revenge now, and unfastens the cloak to stuff it inside. Jace mutters to himself, "Now you can join your friend in hell," not giving the follower a chance to reply back. Retying the bag tight, so not to allow it to break out once it absorbs Boneyard's remains. Jace calms himself, knowing that he has to knowing what he has to witness. Zen and Sid are already at Root's side, who is laying at the bottom of one of the cabin walls. Panting hard, Root lays still, melting the frost from the ground, its eyes fixed on nothing. As Jace slowly approaches, his hands tighten into a fist, trying to not allow his emotions to get the better of him. "That's a good dog, Root," Sid says, rubbing his hand across the silver white fur. Zen, trying to hold back tears, remains standing. "Are you going to heal Root, Zen?" Jace asks with a tone of haste in his voice. "I'm afraid I don't have the energy to use another healing spell again," Zen says meekly, with embarrassment and shame. "The cost of my youth would be too great, and there is no time to exchange life forces among you both. Not to mention it is a Rutaga. The amount of power needed to restore is far greater than any of us have. I'm afraid the damage is done. We just don't have it." They all place their hands in Root's fur, knowing that soon its life force would return to the earth itself. As Root breathing begins to weaken, its eyes glaze over. Its last bit of energy flares up, consuming the body, and slowly turn to amber sparks. As the wind blows away the ashes, the three of them watch as all that remains is the bones of that small field mouse that BC had once befriended. This triggers the response of where BC could be, and as the group turns to the direction of where BC was last seen, they see her peeking out from the thick of the woods, holding one of the mystical creature's eggs and a missing left eye. With a smile on her face, but tears of water and blood falling from both of her eyes, she asks the question, "Guess what I did?"